Everyone at Docstoc's been asking me for like the last 3 days, hey, tell us what you're going to ask us up on stage so we can prepare some answers. And I've, very straightforwardly said, none of the other speakers that come to our events ever get any questions from us ahead of time. So I don't think it'd be fair if you do either. So none of them know what I'm going to ask. Truth be told, I'm not really sure what I'm going to ask.
That's exactly right.
What we're going to do is we're going to do these panels in 20-minute sessions. And then we're going to open each panel up for 5-minute Q&A, and then we're going to switch to the next panel, so it's going to be a bit of a speed round. So what I want you guys to do really quickly is give like a very short, quick background on you, like your experience and product, what you do, and then we're going to jump into the questions.
All right.
You start, amigo.
Can you hear me? Okay. So my name is Alon Schwartz. Apparently, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Docstoc and Jason's partner. Apparently, I'm not technical enough as a CTO to cut the technical team discussion, so I'm a part of the product, right? Thank you, Jason. That's a great show of confidence in the CTO capabilities. So that's pretty much me. I'm a technical guy.
What were you doing before this?
Before, part of a different startup, about 6.5 years, enterprise software, decided that's enough for me. Decided that the web is a lot more interesting. Started thinking about my own startup. At some point, I met this dude here. And the rest is history.
Cool.
Hey, my name is Alan Jones. I started off at a company called Helio, which was a really successful venture. I'm not sure how many of you guys know about that. After I went to a company called MyLife.com, which was previously Reunion.com. It's a major subscription powerhouse. And I am now at Docstoc. I mostly specialize in product, but my subspecialties is style, music, and funniness, which my team probably doesn't agree with me at all, but that's right.
Hi, my name is Zach Richards. I started off at an agency for 2 years, doing everything from print, web. I wanted to focus on web more, and I moved out to LA. I'm originally from Ohio, and I was working at Yahoo on the news team over there here in Santa Monica, and got a job offer from Docstoc. So now I'm the lead designer there and learning a lot. So definitely. So.
Hi, I'm Dudi Aini. I came from Israel. I started as a developer and then project manager for IT security, top secret systems for the government and banks and things like that. I came to LA about 4.5 years ago. Went to school here, and then I met Jason, and I was lucky enough to be part of the very beginning of this company. I'm the VP of e-commerce and content, and what that means is that anything that relates to the product that actually documents and the content on the website, not just the features and the nice things that they build, that's me.
All right, so let me set the ground rules both for us and for everyone here. The panel tonight that we're here talking about is how to build a great internet company. And I want to be very clear, this is not a sales pitch trying to say like, hey, we're the best internet company, we're going to tell you how it's done. What we are is probably a couple steps ahead of where a lot of you are. And the fact of the matter is each of us were right where you're sitting now, and now we've got a company of about 30 of us. We reach about 25 million people a month. It's probably one of the bigger websites online, one of the better well-known ones. And there are a lot of things I think we do well, and a lot of things we're still striving to do well. So our goal tonight is to be as open and candid and honest about the things that we do well, the things that we don't do well, and what we think overall from our experience is made from a great internet company, both from our Docstoc experience and other experience. So with that said, the first question I have for you all is, what are the things when it comes to product, coming up with the ideas, designing, implementing, that you think that we do really well as a company, that other folks have a chance to learn from and emulate in the lessons they want to take? And what are the things that you think that we still have to improve and where we've had challenges and where we want to strive to get better?
So I'll let Alan speak, but I'll just say we think we're better than everyone else. No, I'm joking. Why don't you take it?
So some of the things I think we do really well at Docstoc is and you hear this a lot in the industry, it's like test, test, test. No, seriously, test, right? Like we spend a lot of our time testing the waters, trying to figure out what it is our users actually want, and then we go out and build the actual product. I'll add on to that, we iterate really, really quickly so that we're moving faster than, probably a lot of people in the industry, not just in the speed that we work at, but just in, how we all interact with each other, and it's really, really seamless. So to sum it up, we iterate quickly, and we have seamless communication within the team that I think we do that really, really well.
What are the things that you think that we need to get better at that other companies do really well from a product ideation and execution standpoint?
You know, sometimes we need to be more focused, right? Which happens a lot. I mean, it's not abnormal to get caught up in the day-to-day and just work as fast as you possibly can. But every once in a while, and it's something that we need to do better at Docstoc, is we need to really just pull back and, you know, ask ourselves, you know, what are we building right now? Who is this for? Who is the user? And just be really, really laser focused. I think that's something we can definitely improve on.
So just to add to the previous point, I mean, the other thing we're doing that's, I mean, we're really crazy, I guess. We like to do things that are just like completely out. So, for example, when we started thinking about starting the subscription model that we started late October, we just, okay, well, let's put a page there that let people think that they're going to pay for this document. And of course, when millions of people coming every day, that's kind of a very risky thing. And what will people think? And what will if it will leak out to TechCrunch and people will know and it will break the company, it's a major shift. And we just did it anyways. And we just try it out and see what happens.
And we weren't even charging. We just
right. Didn't charge anyone. It's just like an HTML page. There's nothing, static page, right? We're just recording the intent of people to pay. We didn't build anything. It just one day we build a page and throw it out there. So the lesson really is, if you have an idea, just don't be afraid of trying it out. I mean, there won't be that big of a lashback. Just try, be as crazy as you can, and if it doesn't work, pull the plug, right? I mean, that's one of the things that Jason is pushing a lot is, well, let's just, everyone who download a document will tweet it for them, right? Like, how insane is that? And we'll just try it out, and if there's no major lashback, we'll keep it, you know. There's the whole concept of 2 days. We're just going to try it for 2 days. 6 months later, it's still there, right? But
so let me add to that really quick. You know, even though we were testing, we didn't really charge people. Immediately after, everyone's like, hey, did we get their credit card information? Can we charge them now?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, Alan, can you speak really quickly to how our product cycle works? Like how quickly, at the size of our company, we move out product and the pace of how we do it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it really depends on exactly what we're talking about, how big the product or project is. But you know, at Docstoc, we literally work in 1 week sprint. So we meet on Friday, we talk about what was done that week, and we plan for things from the roadmap to be accomplished in 1 week. We really aim to have everything done really, really quickly. Of course, you have certain things that are just more meaty. They take a lot more time. But we put ourselves on that 1 week limitation so that we're always remembering to move and think really, really quickly so that nothing is really set in stone. Some things are, but you want to be really, really dynamic. I think that's really important.
Okay. And so, Zach, you had come from us previously from Yahoo, and I remember when you started, one of the things that you said that you liked a lot was that the pace at which the stuff that you were creating, your designs, were actually getting on the site. Can you talk about the difference at working at a startup like ours or any other versus what your experience was at Yahoo and what drew you to the startup, experience?
Oh, one thing is, Yahoo's an established company. They know what works. They've tested. They have multiple, verticals on their site. And it's kind of just being consistent, so that's what slowed it down, is when they change something there, they test it like ridiculously. Here, our testing is more like visual, get it up, see if it works, change it, ongoing stuff like that. I like that it's fast paced with doing that, because you really get to, as a designer, you get to really explore different elements, different things that I personally enjoy or what the company likes. Using the website and then seeing what works, and with a startup is really exciting because the impacts are either bad or great. I mean, there's just big percentages there, so it's pretty exciting.
And talk a little bit about how you like to be managed as a designer and what parameters you want to be given, because a lot of the folks in here I'm imagining are, do me a favor, if you're in the process of starting a new internet venture or have done so in the last 6 months, raise your hand, okay? So we've probably got about 50 people in here. They're in the process of starting a new internet company, and probably the first thing that they're all going to start off with is a designer, right? To mock up their idea, what's ever in their head. Talk a little bit about how you want to be managed, where you think it's helpful, how many parameters you want to be given of what to do and what not to do, and then where you want to just kind of be left alone to be creative. How can these folks find and manage designers to get the best output?
So I'm going to start off. One thing, if you're starting out fresh from scratch, finding a good designer that fits your style and your audience. The designer will ask you the questions that they need to, target your audience or what you want your site to be like. A lot of misconceptions are, I'll just get a graphic designer. Well, if you're doing an internet company, web, you need a web designer. The difference is the background, the technology, working with grids, all that kind of stuff. Like it's, you know, they'll know. And when you're looking for someone, you want the kind of like when you're in an art gallery and you see a piece of artwork. Do you know if it's good? Do you like it? You'll know if you like the designer, their design, their style. The other thing is content. When you get a designer and you say, I want to build a website, okay, that's like giving them a blank canvas and saying, go. You know, have content, know what you want to say, have a sitemap, give them ideas, give them as much as you can. Visuals, anything. If you like another site, give them examples. I mean, that's the hardest thing for a designer, even though we can basically try to pull. It's our job is to pull from your head. You know, it's give them as much information as you can.
Let me help you here. Usually they're saying, make it more oomph. Make it like
pop.
Shout, pop, right? I mean, none of them.
doesn't
Design
feel
language,
right.
I don't
Yeah,
exactly know what that
they
means.
make it more like alive. It's a website, right? I mean, don't make it alive. So yeah, try to be more specific. And to the other side, don't be this, right? Don't like take their hand and actually draw it on Photoshop. Just set them free a little bit. Part of the building it is being creative, so don't be too crazy on. So put the button right here. No, 2 pixels below. 2 pixels to the right, right? Just.
Yeah.
And we don't do that. I mean,
I think something that's really important, you know, with working with a great designer is give them an opportunity to innovate. A really good designer also has, you know, a business, thinks about the business as well. They're not just artists, for me at least, in my experience, and I think Zach does a really good job of that. You know, one thing I had to get in the habit of really quickly with working with him is he likes to, you know, I mean, think for himself, right? I don't need to sit and think for him. So, I mean, of course, when you're starting up, you want the design to represent you, but you also want to hire someone who already represents you, so that you can hire them, bring them on, and trust that they're going to build something that is a correct representation of you and your company.
Cool. So, Dudi, as you mentioned in your intro, you are now one of a small group of folks who were with us from the very beginning at our first office in Beverly Hills, which sounds a lot more glamorous than it actually was. And you've probably been more than anybody in the company, the jack of all trades, where you've touched a lot of different things. What are things in product and overall in Docstoc that you think that we've done well, that as people think about how to start and build a great internet company, they should take away? And then really also, what are the things that, you know, we've messed up on or done wrong that are kind of the, you know, words of wisdom to pass on to others?
Yeah, so I think there's one thing which works for both ways, and that is, and they mentioned the speed and the implementation, the speed in which we get products up live and working, and I think that one thing is you know, works both ways. And what I've seen, you know, we went we tried different products, different ideas, and we tested different things. And one thing that sort of characterizes the way we think about it is, let's come up with an idea, build a product, and then come up with a vision what this product should be later on. So you know, the vision comes after the product, which is not typically the way you build things. But on the flip side, we don't spend as much time thinking and analyzing and, you know, designing a vision and you know, spend a month building just a vision, and then just, you know, if it doesn't work, you spent a month. On that, you know, just to add to that, if something doesn't work, we just, you know, throw it away. You know, we spend 2 months developing something, implementing, and we see, you know, it doesn't catch, doesn't work. We did it, you know, more than 2 or 3 or 4 times, I think. Didn't work. Let's, you know, move on. Let's throw it away. We don't stay too attached to the products that we develop unless, you know, we really like it, and for some reason it doesn't catch, but we really like it. We think we believe in it, and then we push it and you know, take it to the extreme.
yeah, I would just say that you said throwing away. Yeah, we don't throw anything away. Try to get one feature that was developed off the site, right? That's impossible. We just pulled the plug, right? So there's some packages here and there, and things that just some different features that did not blow out, right? We think that something will actually be something big, and we build something quickly, try it out. If it doesn't really explode, we just leave it alone, right? And just move on to the next thing. And that's partially one of the good things we're doing, is that we are just experimenting with a lot of things and just build it, don't get attached to it, and that's something Jason is really good at, honestly. It's if it doesn't work, it's not it doesn't work. If it doesn't become huge, if you don't think this will become something really big, just move on. don't be too attached to it and try to like, I really like this thing. It doesn't matter. The things that I would add to what Dudy mentioned about things that need to improve is a longer vision, things that we need to really, especially in this size of the company now, we really need to start looking forward and say, okay, well, how will it be in 2 years, right? So that's something we're working on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We date our product. We have product promiscuity problems.
Yes.
I'll be your own.
And then just one last thing on that. I think it's a good thing we're doing is there's no one source of ideas that, it's not like, Jason comes up with ideas and then Alon evaluates it and then the development team builds it. Everybody, like the actual features that are on the site, each feature came from a different person. So everybody suggests features and then we discuss it and then there's a lot of freedom of, everybody sees a different side of the company, different side of the product and gets a different inspiration. And that's one of the things that also, one of the reasons why we have so many ideas and we have to act fast on them. But that's I think it's a good trait.
So I think one of the big things is consistency in what you're all saying, and I would say as a starting point for how to build a great internet company is when Alon and I started Docstoc 4 years ago, neither of us had ever built a consumer internet application. I mean, you've been working in technology a long time, but I was coming out of business school and law school. I had never done anything on the internet, and Alon, had been working in enterprise software. And what I would say is something that we did, which isn't uncommon to our situation, is when you start out, you really both from a product standpoint and from a business standpoint want to be able to emulate other people who have had success and copy and iterate very quickly. And the mistake a lot of us make is that we try to figure out things on our own. And we take a very long, circuitous route of saying, hey, I'm going to figure this out, I'm smart enough. And sometimes it's the people that are too smart for their own good that take a long time. Where there are a lot of folks out there that have already had a model for success. And one of our mantras early on is, let's copy and iterate. Let's copy and iterate, both from product, how people got customers, how people got traffic. And we never really tried to invent from scratch a model that worked. What we did instead, rather, is we said, what are other people that are doing that are successful? And how do we copy them as quickly as possible? And then iterate and make what we're doing our own. And just, the thing I'd ask you to share is, from 4 years ago to today, what are the big things that you think that we've done, together as co-founders, but then as an organization, to really kind of break out of the pack, and what are some of the things that the folks here should take from those lessons?
Wow. Yeah, I think even more of a recent example instead of like something thinking back 4 years is like emails, let's say. So we're starting now a lot of email marketing, right? So instead of starting from scratch, really, and saying, how should an email look like? People like, well, let's look at what people have done. So look at a lot of examples of emails that are actually working, things that we like, and just copy them, copy the structure. I'm sure they're between Yahoo and Amazon, whatever, all of these, they done so many testing. Why should we start from scratch and really start this whole, what email work for Docstoc? Start from something that works and then improve it. So that's just one example.
So let's stay on that, because Alan, I'd like you and Dudy and Zach also to talk about, share with everyone here kind of our ideation and creation process on the product side, right? So, we actually had the order of tonight different. We were going to start off with business development and sales, and then go to product and technology. And Tucker, our head of business development, said, hey, Jason, start with product. That's where people are here in the room. Then go to development, go to sales. So we made an audible at the last second, which was a great idea. But, as a lot of people here are looking at building out their first version of the products, building their second, talk a little bit about how we actually come up with ideas for products, how we implement them, and then the discipline that we've built where we immediately go to look at what other people are doing and see what elements we want to take from them.
What makes money?
Revenue. So, so one of the ways in which we come up with the ideas on what to build, besides just everyone brainstorming and every single day when you go online and you browse other sites and you see what other people are doing, that's one. One of the main ways I like to decide what our product direction should be is so I mentioned this earlier, is testing. So what I like to do is I like to test something that proves the theory. So if I can test something out on the site that will say, like, for example, people are looking for some sort of corporate option, right? But instead of going on the back end and building out this entire corporate option that includes licenses and some storage space and a total that pretty much sums it up. But if we're going after corporate options, we should test it first. Like, let's figure out if there's even an audience for it. So a good way that I like to define my product direction is basically ask the user by putting something in their face. Don't literally throw out a questionnaire, which is sometimes good too, but put something in their face and see how they react. If they react to it, then it lets me know that there's possibly potential in this area for Docstoc.
What do you do early on before you got a lot of users? I mean, what's your methodology and discipline of how you create new product?
I need more to that question.
So if you're starting a website from scratch and you don't have a lot of users that you can test with right away, how are you making decisions on what kind of products and features you want to build? How are you prioritizing that list?
Gotcha. So one good way, so there's no user, there's no Docstoc. I'm just thinking about a new product to build. First of all, like you guys have probably heard before, I think of something that I do every single day that really bothers me, and then I think to myself, like, there has to be a fucking better way to do this. And then eventually I come up with some sort of product. First F-bomb of the night, by the way.
You're going to pay for that. Yeah.
And I basically think about something really that I do every single day, and I think, like, why has no one done this yet? Or I look at something that people were doing already, and maybe there's already a product, and I think to myself, dude, there has to be an easier way to do that. That can't be the only way to make a deposit, right? So now you can take a picture of your check and deposit it, right? There has to be an easier way. So I guess to sum it up, one, I think to myself, what do I do every day that bothers me, and how do I think I can make that better? And what are other people doing that I think I can improve on?
So one other question I want to ask you, Ian, where are you? Stand up, Ian? So Ian's a good friend of ours. He's actually subleasing some space from us. He's got an awesome company called ZipRecruiter that lets you very easily post your job recommendations online to every single major job board. And there's no extra cost. It's a monthly subscription service. And you came from Rent.com. You came from My Life. Where else were you at?
I was at Stamps.com.
All right, stop bragging, dude. All right, that's enough. So, but Ian has been someone that we all looked up to for a long time as one of the best heads of product. And Alan, you worked for him for a little while at My Life. Talk to us about the things that you thought and the discipline that he brought in that was really good that you've often raved about.
Arrogance. I'm just kidding. So two things, or a few things that Ian taught me is, worry about the things that are really going to make a difference. It's really easy to get caught up on arguing and discussing all these little changes that at the end of the day don't make a difference. So that's one of the things. Two is my testing principles came from Ian, my philosophy in terms of testing in general. And three, kind of just get something out there, right? Make it as good as you can. Get it out there. Don't worry about all the details. So a lot of times, like I said, and even at Docstoc, I'm guilty of this myself. I get caught up in discussing, color and copy and how they should move this here, and no, it doesn't feel right. And at the end of the day, just get something in front of your users and see how it's going to perform. If you spend so much time discussing how it's going to be perfect, you're only discussing how it's perfect in your own head. You have no idea how perfect it's going to be to the individual user that's on the other end of the screen. So you can talk about it all day. You can try and prove out your theories and voice your opinions. At the end of the day, they don't mean shit. Get it in front of someone who's actually going to use it, and then you'll know how it's going to perform.
Yeah. So Duty and Zach, can you, for everyone here as they're going through, how do I actually build a product? How do I bring it to life? Can you talk a little bit more about our actual ideation process, how we come up with ideas, how we, in the very first thing, bring things to wireframes, bring things to life, and how that will be helpful and applicable to where they're at and starting and iterating on their products?
Yeah. So usually it starts off with Jason running into our office and saying, hey, I got an idea. Let's get it done. I want it in 5 minutes. And I look at him like, okay. No. And Alan's like, yeah, that'll be next week. Oh, so it was.
It does happen.
Anyway, no, it'll start with an idea from Jason or Alan or anyone on our team because we all kind of work really well together. Like anyone comes to has an idea, we'll bring it up to improve our product. But it starts, you got to start somewhere. So we kind of brainstorm, we'll look at examples, do a little research. Alan and I will sit down and come up with what we want to on the page, content again. That's a big importance. What's the user gonna? How is the user gonna interact with the page? You need something simple, quick, and then
and almost
build
in
it
every
out.
case, we're looking at another website for an example. We almost never start from a blank slate.
Yeah, I mean nowadays, there's 100. I don't even know how many millions of sites there are out there. Everything's pretty much been done and tested. Go to the experts with that. I mean, even as bad as I'm a designer, I say that I'll put my own touch in. I'm not worried about that, but we'll get a wireframe, we'll put it up, design it. Usually we'll run back and forth a few iterations till we find something we like, and then give it to development, and then run with it.
Duty, can you talk about our ideation process?
Yeah, so I think, a couple things that were mentioned which are true, and, we do take inspiration from other sites, but there's mainly two things that drive ideas. And the first is, they mention it as, Jason talking to someone or looking at some other site and say, well, let's do the same thing as they're doing. They're making money, it probably works. And the other one is it's pretty much driven from the bottom line. So, as the company developed, like originally we started with a free site, it was almost like 100% advertising revenue, and at that time, the question was how can we increase the advertising revenue from advertising, how we can optimize advertising, what product can we offer to get more people to see ads, to click on ads, and that's what drove our ideas, creation of ideas and brainstorming sessions. As we progressed, we had the store, and then we sold one-off documents, and we had a library of documents and reports. And the ideas were, how do we create more products for sale? How do we generate more documents for sale? How do we increase the order size? So we add a cart, and we add suggestions. And now we're talking about subscriptions. So our ideas are mainly driven by how do we generate more subscription revenue. So I think that's the number one criteria. What going to move the needle the most for the revenue? And as we move through different revenue models, that changed the way we looked at ideas and conceptualized ideas. Then below ideas, then the second and third criteria, which is how difficult it is, how likely it is to succeed, and then how long it's going to take to develop, what is the opportunity cost of building that feature. And then the way we like to think about it, there's a fourth element, which is how core it is to the business, how similar it is to other things we do, what advantage is going to give us in the long term. But first and foremost, how much revenue it can make, and how likely it is to succeed.
So I'll just add just comments. First of all, we don't copy everything. Sometimes we do come up with some original ideas, so it is important to look at other people. But yeah, we're not completely cheaters. One other thing that we didn't bring up is phasing everything, right? So there are a lot of companies that are taking everything. They come up with an idea and they want to build it all, and they spend 2, 3, 4 months and just building everything and making sure that every pixel and every button is right, and they're building the whole shebang, right? And if it doesn't work, you just wasted 4 months, right? Whatever it took you. So what we do is really phase, and we're just saying, what is the bare minimum, the absolutely piece of shit we can throw out there that really just gonna stay alive? People won't throw up by looking at it, right? Really, just take it out there and see if it works. And then if it does, great. Now build a real product, build on top of it. If it's not, yeah, put it aside, and that's it. And that concept is really hard for people to think, because they're really falling in love with their idea and what it really needs to do and how it needs to look. And everyone is perfectionist, not us, of course, but everyone else is perfectionist. And they really want to build that thing they had in their head, and they're spending so much time, and time flies. And before you know it, weeks and months pass by, and you didn't release anything, and all that is just an idea you have in your head. You don't even know if it works. And if it doesn't work, you just wasted so much time. So phase everything and break it down into the absolutely bare minimum, and just argue with technology about you really don't have to do that, and you don't have to do that. And I'm the CTO, so I'm telling you that. Just really break everything to the bare minimum.
Okay. So we're about to switch out the panels. Before we do, are there 1 or 2 questions that you guys have for this group of folks before we go on to the actual developers themselves? What's your name?
Rob.
Hey, Rob.
When you launch a new feature, do you launch also a series of metrics and analysis to figure out if that feature is working, and if so, what tools do you use?
Sure. So the question is, when you launch a new feature, do we launch also? How do we track it? What are the metrics that we use? Do we build that stuff in-house? Do we get it from outside? What do we do around that?
So I'll take this one. And anytime you put anything on your site, or no matter any decision you make, or sorry, not any, but most decisions you make should be accompanied by a set of metrics to measure their success or failure, right? Otherwise, you're just shooting blanks. So everything that we do on the site has a set of metrics that we've said before we launch it. It needs to hit these goals in order for us to call it a success. It needs to hit these goals to say there's a glimmer of hope. We should continue to iterate on it. And if it hits these goals, it means it just didn't work out. We're going to go in another direction. It'll never be something this big for the business. A lot of the software we use to measure that is proprietary. We built most of that stuff in-house. Thanks, guys. They're over there. All the engineering team built that for us. And then, of course, we have our Google Analytics. And in the past, I've used things like Omniture and their whole suite of products to measure things as well.
All right, I think we're going to switch out this panel. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Let's get some music going for the next set of folks that we got coming up here. All right, so next up coming to the stage, we've got our Director of Engineering, Josh Korb. Come on up. Josh Fury, our front-end developer. Andrew Bellos, our back-end developer. Michelle Wyatt, our back-end developer. And Alex Rev, come on up. You keep the applause going for them. They like it. I like it. And then, Alex, I think we may need to bring up one extra seat over there. So the question was, what do we do to trademark and patent things? From the peanut gallery, though the person wasn't called on. Most things we don't trademark and patent. And most things that you build in consumer internet, you won't need a trademark or patent, but if you do, we can get around to that later. So once again, let's go through a quick background, who you are, what you do with Docstoc, what your area of expertise is, and then we're going to jump into the questions. This by far is the group that I think, had the most amount of certainty. They're like, hey, don't tell us any questions that you're going to ask. We're ready to roll the punches. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And Josh brought up his neck brace because...
you hurt me.
Yeah, he's just demonstrating what happens at Docstoc when we don't get product out soon enough. So without any further ado.
All right, my name is Joshua Korb. I started in technology about 10 years ago, cutting my teeth with telephony and voice over IP, moved into online universities, eventually landed myself as a senior architect at MySpace, and then a lead engineer at Demand Media down the street, and then Docstoc.
Where you are the...
Director of Engineering.
Come on, be proud about it. Yay!
Hi, I'm Josh Fury. I'm a web developer here at Docstoc. I started my career at Avanade, where I was doing consulting, and then I was brought into MySpace, and now I'm here at Docstoc.
Hey, my name's Andrew Bellos. I started developing when I was around 18 years old. Been hopping around startups mostly. Up until Docstoc, I was working a lot with enterprise software, and now working at Docstoc, one of the software developers here.
Hi, I'm Michelle Wyatt. I started at Lockheed Martin and then did a bunch of little startups here and there, and started here at Docstoc 2.5 years ago. So I'm a back-end developer.
I'm Alex Zherdev. I started out developing in 2000 for Vivendi Universal. I then moved on to Sierra Online. And after a faithful motorcycle ride with Andrew, I was introduced to Docstoc, and I've been here since 2008.
Cool. And this, by the way, is how they dress every day when they come to work. It's a very elite group of fashion developers. All right, so let's get a sense of the audience here. So if you are currently or have been in a past life a developer or technologist, raise your hand. All right, good amount. If you are currently looking to find developers to help with your startup project or business, raise your hand. All right. So one of the things we're going to do in a little bit when we can bring the house lights up, I want to try to help connect this group. One of the most common questions that we've gotten at every single Startups Uncensored since we started this thing 2.5 years ago is, hey, I'm looking for a developer. Can you help me find one? So let's start off with two questions tied together is, one, what are the best ways to meet your kind in the wild and capture them and bring them in and train them and feed them? And then secondly, once you've all been caught and domesticated, how does someone that's a non-engineer, a non-technical person, know when they're dealing with a good developer, and what are the qualities that make for good developers for startup internet companies? So you can start, Josh.
All right. So I think the number one thing, especially when I'm looking to recruit developers and meeting developers in the past, is really passion. Like any artist, we're really craftspeople, and there's a lot of passion. And just by asking a developer, like, oh, what do you think of this technology? Or tell me a little bit about this. That's how you can really tell they're passionate. If they just rant and rant and rant for hours and hours and get into the nitty gritty, that's the best way to find a really good developer.
And then, where do you all hang out? Like, what do you do? Like, where are your clubs? Like, where do you eat?
We're at the developer cave most of the time. Other than that, there's mostly like technical boards and things like that. Technical blogs, 37 Signals, GitHub, Hacker News, Reddit. Those are places you guys probably haven't heard about because that's where tech people go. But if you go there, there's tons of people. People are fairly introverted, so if you sort of attack them and ask them nicely, they'll probably talk to you and give you a little bit of advice at the very least.
Josh, Fury, what do you think makes for a really good developer, and what are the best ways that folks that aren't developers can find and court business relationships with them?
Sure. I think one of the big things about being at a startup is you have to be really quick on your feet, and you have to be able to see a developer who can actually be comfortable with prototyping and be able to get something out really quickly, and also be able to do good engineering after that. And I don't know, most of the time we do friend networks or at bars usually.
And so Andrew, same question for you, but also talk a little bit about, what are the characteristics that having worked in different size companies, what are there characteristics that you think make for really good developers at very small startups and early stage companies versus folks? Because one of the challenges in LA is there aren't the same number of startups as there are in the Bay, so a lot of times developers aren't coming from other small startups where they have that background, but they're coming directly out of school, they're coming from large companies or banks. So, how can folks really find out someone that's going to do well and excel in a startup environment?
Well, I think the first thing you want to look for a developer in a startup is someone with a lot of flexibility. So someone that could come in, and even though they don't know the product or they don't know the technology that they might be working with, that they can innovate on their feet, be quick about it, and just learn very quickly. So that's actually one of the things that happened at Docstoc with me. Like, I came in from an enterprise world, dove into web development, had to pick it up. So.
Yeah, and how was that transition? Because you were working with Alon more in software and for enterprise customers. Talk a little bit about what the transition was like and the big things that you learned as you went from being an enterprise developer dealing more in software applications to a web developer and everything that implied.
I guess the very first thing is scale. Like enterprise applications are usually writing for, even in large corporations, it's 1,000 people, 2,000 people. When you write an application for a website, it's millions and millions of people are visiting your site. So what you want to do is create applications that are flexible and are able to handle the load that the internet provides you.
So Michelle, same question for you. What are the characteristics that you found to be the consistent habits of very, very talented, successful developers, and what makes them excel in a startup environment?
I think the most important thing, which kind of speaks a bit to what Andrew was saying with flexibility, is problem solving. Especially if you're getting products out there really quickly, there are going to be bugs. There's going to be things that go wrong, and you got to be able to find it and fix it quickly without freaking out. You got to know how to diagnose the problem, isolate it, and figure out how to fix it.
Yeah. So talk a little bit also about your experience at Docstoc, because you immediately before coming to work with us had been at Caltech, right? So you were in this.
Not immediately, no.
For a little while before that.
But yeah.
But what was the experience like of just kind of being thrown into Docstoc and then working on all sorts of different web applications? What were some of the big things that you learned in terms of how you excel as a developer and really become one of the best, which I think you have?
Well, so I actually I worked at 2 other small startups before this one, and the reason I looked at Docstoc and loved it was because I knew that I love startups. They give you a chance to grow in a different way. Because you have to be flexible, you come in, I started out doing testing and very little else, and then they had some project that they couldn't devote a senior developer to, so it got thrown my way, and I got to be the one who built it. And you just kind of grow like that. You get to take on more and more responsibility over time, and that's really what my experience was starting out.
Same for you, Alex. What are the characteristics that you think make for really good developers?
I think as a developer, you need to get something done. One of the things that I've met some developers, especially in enterprise world, are developers that want to get everything perfect. And when you talk to the developer, you ask them, what have you done? Can you show me any work? And if they can't really show you anything that they've done, no matter how bad it is, usually it's because they are perfectionists that I've met. They are people that they don't want to show you the work because they don't think it's good enough to be shown to people. And it'll be very difficult to get anything done in a startup from those people because it's just going to take too long for them to accomplish anything. So anybody who brags about their Pac-Man game, who brags about the simplest little website that they've done, those are good developers because they actually got something from start to finish, and they're proud to show it to you.
So let's stay on that topic a little bit. Alex, talk about it. One of the things is, can you talk about the process of how you balance, the way that you like to work with lots of business demands, right? It's a very common situation. You're at a startup. You got folks that aren't technologists a lot of times coming up with ideas and pushing things like we talked about in the last panel that come from, hey, what's the strategy of the business? What's going to help us make revenue? And certainly at Docstoc, there's a constant sense of urgency and demand. We've got to get stuff out. We've got to move fast. How do you successfully balance the business demands that are placed upon you with what you think are technical best practices for developing for the web?
Honestly, I usually throw a lot of the best practices out because at the end, just like what you guys spoke before, sometimes you just need to put a page that basically mimics the functionality that you want. So as a developer, I come up with whatever the framework that needs to be as quickly as I can, because usually when then I come back and I present it to the business team or to Alon, like here's what I built, et cetera, usually the requirements will change between the time you started on Monday and Wednesday when you actually showed it. So for me to have spent a week developing using best practices and such would have gone to waste because halfway through the requirements changed. I need new functionality. I need new features that I didn't account for previously. So for me, really, it's just get it out the door. There'll be enough iterations in your product, especially at the very beginning, that you're going to have enough time to go back. You'll be rewriting it over and over and over, usually, a lot of the code. Not specific functions and such, but as a piece of software like search and such, that you'll have the opportunities then to inject best practices into. So,
Em, I mean, how has Docstoc been relative to other places you've been at as far as like a sense of urgency and speed at which you have to work, and how have you balanced that and just overall, working with a business team and tech team simultaneously?
It's like 1,000 times more urgent. So when I was working at Lockheed, it was years between when I was working on code and when it actually flew the plane, so it was not that urgent. And even other startups, we were not moving nearly as fast as we are here. So it's quite a fast-paced environment.
And a lot of developers will, and not to say that going fast is always the right thing. A lot of times it makes sense to take a step back, think about what we're doing, and certainly as we get bigger and bigger, that's one of our big opportunities and challenges. But what advice would you have for developers that haven't worked in that kind of classic startup pace where the expectation is to move very, very quickly and iterate? What are the things that, what are the characteristics that either need to make a developer successful in that environment, or what are the ways they need to adapt to be able to be successful in that environment?
I think what Alex was saying is really important. Just realize that you're going to put out an unfinished product. It's going to come out in the simplest form possible, just so that you can get it out there. It's encouraging actually working in a really fast-paced environment, because you do something on Monday and you see it sometimes released later that day, or a day or two later. And so there's a lot of feedback really quickly, which is very encouraging as a developer and gives you the passion to keep going.
Cool. And so, Andrew, can you also talk a little bit? I mean, I think one of the things that might be interesting for the folks here to hear about is you were the very first employee of Docstoc, and you were with us when it was you, me, and Alon, and you were working with us when it was out of my living room, and you were this in the very, very early days when we literally would be at the office regularly until about 2 or 3 a.m. Just talk to everyone here about your perspective from being at the company from when it was 3 people, in a little office working, totally insane hours to 30 people where it's just kind of insane hours. Like, what was that experience like for you?
Honestly, it was a lot of fun, but then I really enjoy it, which is why I actually spent a lot of my time in the startup world. Overall, if you look at it, you can say that it's become more structured, the company, over time. Initially, when we first started working.
I mean, that first year, what hours were you what hours were you working?
Yeah, we were working 7 days a week, like 14 hours a day, if not more. So it was pretty crazy hours, but Jason delivers pizza, so that was good.
And then how did you notice the change, and talk about that process of along the way where you found a change and where different processes and procedures came in from the development side at the different stages?
I think when it's 3 people working on one product, it's a lot easier to not have any structure, not have any procedures in place, and as you get more and more people on board, you just need to have it. Otherwise, it ends up being kind of a mess. People don't really know what they're doing, especially with a large development team. People are working on the same code, messing other people up. As far as the product team goes, I think the biggest thing actually is the bridge between product and development, and that's what we actually just recently really came to. Initially, business guys would come up to developers and get it done. Jason alone would come up to me, get it done. And the first couple of developers, same thing. Now, as the companies are growing larger and larger, we have a large product team. If every single one of them will come up to every single developer and tell them build this, it's called build this feature right now, the developer would never get anything done. So I think that's really one of the things that changed throughout time.
Yeah. So for the Joshes plural, or Josh I, or whatever you guys want to be called, talk a little bit about your experience, because when you've been at MySpace and Demand, how many engineers were there? There were hundreds of engineers, right?
Probably like 600 or something.
Great. And you all talk more directly into the microphone because your inside voices are already here. So talk about the difference of working at a company our size, where we now have 12 engineers, which probably compared to where a lot of you are at feels like, wow, that's a ton of folks. But versus where you're at with hundreds of engineers, and what the advantages are of our size, but then also what are the challenges and what are some of the things, the natural growing pains that you go through as you get to be a much larger organization that we all need to plan and prepare for.
Sure. Well, I think one of the nice things is we're really easy to talk to all the product people here. I steal something from Initech, but I had 4 product managers at MySpace, so it's much more focused here.
What were the big things that you learned and took from MySpace with that many developers and engineers?
Yeah, the biggest thing was actually just being able to dive in and look at other people's stuff, what they've done, and being able to debug and be able to figure out how other people's stuff works. That was a really big thing there. But here, it's those skills have really applied well.
And Corb, what were the biggest differences for you between working at, what were some of your big takeaways from MySpace, from Demand Media, from Docstoc that anyone here is looking to work or manage developers should really think about?
Yeah, so I was about the 50th developer at MySpace, so it was still sort of the Wild West when I first started. There was deployments every 5 minutes, essentially. People were just sitting there checking in code, deploy, deploy, deploy. And over time, we sort of lost a lot of the flexibility. It became every 2 days we'd do a deployment, every 3 days. Now only certain teams can deploy on Thursdays and Fridays, and then finally it was month-long deployments. And when you're running a business or a startup, or even in those phases, you can't wait that long to push out features because people like Facebook are going to eat your lunch. Then I went over to Demand, sort of medium-sized, sort of startup thing, and they had deployments once a week. Even then you started to feel sort of the pressures where businesses and advertising things and things just weren't going out fast enough, and you could start to see the pains. Docstoc is sort of the opposite, where you could see like the best of both worlds, where you basically want to deploy when it's necessary, not force the deployment cycle every Friday or anything, because then you're going to have a large build, or things just aren't going to be stable. You aren't going to be able to test everything. And on top of it, if you deploy when it's necessary, you're able to test everything as it's needed, and you get all your business requirements. You get everything that needs to go out when it's needed.
And so, Josh, talk to us a little bit more about, because one of the things that was a huge, I'd say, growth in our company was when you came in and you started managing the dev team. I would say, having Alon try to do everything he needed to do as a co-founder and CTO, and then really be, a director of engineering simultaneously, as well as a product manager. It's one of the bottlenecks that we all have. And when you came in, it really opened up and freed up the company. And talk about your experience from being managed as a developer to now managing a team of developers. What do you think are the things that lead to a successful management of a development team? What are the things to be aware of as folks here try to manage developers, whether they're technical people or not technical people, or hire somebody to do that? What are kind of the keys to success?
So one of the things I really hated when I was a developer was being looked at as a resource. I mean, people are not resources. They can't just work 8 hours and develop 8 hours worth of work, especially development. It's sort of like an art thing. You don't know what's going to go wrong, what's going to go good or bad or whatnot like that. So it's really important to keep that in the back of your head. Another thing is there's product and then there's engineering product. And a lot of times they're coupled together, and it's hard for people that aren't technical to see that there's two sides of everything. So the best thing, the thing I was really trying to do is, treat everyone with respect. Obviously, engineers tend to be a very smart group of people, and respect them and understand they're not resources, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to do the actual product development. That's basically it.
And what are just some of the other lessons that you've kind of learned over the last year, as far as how you really are successful in a startup? Like, where have your growing pains been that you can kind of share some of the challenges that you've personally gone through in terms of managing a development team that would be helpful for the folks here?
It's really managing expectations. I think that's really the hardest thing, really translating, it's funny, from Office Space, you say, I'm a people person, I'm the only one who can talk to developers. But that's sort of what my role is. I really talk to developers, translate what they are. And coming from a technical background, it's really important because I really, truly understand their pains. I understand how long things are going to take, or they should take, and keep them honest about it. And really translate to the business side, and really set expectations on the business side. Like, hey, we want to make this go 10 times faster. Well, honestly, that's not going to happen, and from a very realistic standpoint. And also making business side really more technical. Business people don't really have that same logic, so they do like if-else statements. But a lot of times there's a lot more elegance in your solutions, and that's really where engineering steps up and becomes product. So that's really the goal.
Yeah. And I would say from my standpoint, that's where I think we've both struggled and found a lot of success is, being a non-technical person, you see something done one time at a certain pace, and you're like, oh, it can always be done that way, that quickly. And invariably, I always think that things should be able to be done faster and quicker. And one of the things that I think that, Alon and I had to develop early on, and you've done really well, is that setting expectations. Like, hey, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's how long it'll take. And the more clear communication you have between business and tech about what are the expectations on each side, how long things will take, what's the expectation of how perfect it'll be off the bat, that's where really, as you start to scale as an organization, it's one of the things that adds a lot of fluidity. Cool. So one of the things I want to just do real quick, all the developers, all the folks here that are developers, do me a favor, stand up for a second. Stand up. Don't be shy. I know.
And dance.
I know. Just stand up. Folks are developers here. Cool? No, stay standing. It's okay. Just stay standing a moment. How many of you right now are gainfully employed? Okay. And how many of you would be open to any side projects or anything else? Okay? Stay there standing. Stay there standing, all right? For the folks here that are in the room tonight looking for developers, take a look at these folks' faces, take a mental snapshot, go to find them. Just once again, if you are looking to work with or hire a developer, raise your hand. All right? We're going to make some matches tonight, my friends. We're going to make a love connection. I'm telling you, this is going to happen here. All right, this is happening afterwards. Do we have any burning desire questions for our awesome tech panel that was here this evening? to go over a couple things. My friend here in the back, what's your name, sir?
Chris Penny.
Chris Penny. Chris, tell me your question and I'll repeat it over the mic.
Oh, I can talk loud. I want to know from the panel how many recruiting calls you get a week, and what's the best way to recruit a developer, and what's the worst way?
I like it.
They're not allowed
And
to
who's
talk
calling
to
to
us.
recruit you? Because I'm going to beat them down.
So I can answer this. I get about 30 million emails, 40,000 phone calls every 5 minutes. Really, the best thing to do, and the best recruiters I deal with are ones I have a personal relationship and really know me and really are able to get a really great match for me, like Docstoc. I went to one recruiter, she got me the job here, very happy, worked out really well.
Is Nitu here? Where's Nitu at? Where are our cybercoder friends? Where are cybercoder people at? Stand up, cybercoders. Just for a reference, we've used them to recruit every single person we have on our development team that we use a recruiter for. They're amazing. You should just go talk to them. All right, so.
Yeah, so to your point, really develop a relationship with the developers. That's really your best bet. And all the developers I know that use recruiters, they have a relationship with them.
Cool. Other questions? What else we got here? In the front here, what's your name? Kenyatta. Kenyatta, what's your name? What's your question?
So if you, as a startup, if you're one or two people, and do you look for a partner, a technology partner that's a big group, a large group if you're trying to develop a website, or should you just try and get one person, bring them on as a team member? I mean, what's the best way to...
I think that's a great question. So the question was, as a startup, would you look to hire and outsource a company to do the development to start? Or would you look to bring on, one or two people as a partner or as an employee early on? Fury, Andrew, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Michelle?
I actually have what you should do is you should find one person that's really good technically. You should hire him and hold on to him. And that person is going to get you other talent. So make sure that you get one person. If you're not technical, you don't have anybody in your team that is technical, like that really knows tech, and he will either have connections to other technical people or he'll know what to look for in developers and how to hire them. So to answer your question, hire one and then have him decide whether to outsource or to hire more people.
And any other thoughts?
No, I agree completely. I was going to say the same thing. Hire one person and then maybe he'll want to outsource. But yeah, get at least one good person.
All right, let's get one more awesome question in here. You got to ask the question already, checkered shirt guy, all the way in the back. Stand up. What's your name? Costa.
So, how do you, can you guys talk a little bit about your software testing when you iterate so quickly?
All right, so how do we do our software testing at Docstoc?
I can answer that. We test our own code, and we push out the code quick enough that there aren't a lot of complexity to the changes, so we can very quickly see if there's any kind of issues.
Actually, one thing to add to that, when you actually deploy new features, and it's something I've used a ton of times, is have some on-off switch on all your features, and if it fails or you have trouble with it, you're able to turn it off and on and actually test it in production fairly quickly.
And also, the ability to release to a small portion of users is always useful. Let a little bit of traffic, especially if you're worried about stability, let a little bit of traffic see it, and then you can watch your logs and see if there are any errors.
Yeah, I would add just one more thing, you guys. It's all nice and pretty cute, but just the truth is, release the site, right? Let the community be your tester. I mean, that's really what we do a lot. I'm not recommending it to everyone. I'm not saying it's the best practice. I'm just saying that's what we do a lot. And if it breaks, you'll know very quickly. But yeah, so make sure there's an on-off. But
when you hear
you can't test that much when you're releasing that fast.
If it compiles, release it.
So basically, yeah, there are no best practices.
You can find that and other developer humor in fortunecookiesfordevelopers.com. All right, panel, thank you very much. Bring a round of applause. Let's get the music back going for the next set of Docstoc stars coming up. All right, now we got the money makers coming up. We got the Docstoc business development and sales team. Let's come on up, Tucker Smith, VP of Business Development. Yeah! John Jorgensen, our Business Development Manager. Jeff Conkey, our Ad Manager. And Kaveh, our Content Manager. Come on, scoot down. All right, we've got the final Docstoc panel. We're gonna drop some knowledge on y'all. We're gonna talk about how to make money, get partnerships, manage people, be super successful, and then we're gonna eat and have some sodas and hang out and get to know each other. So let's do a quick background: who you are, what you do at Docstoc, what you did before. We'll go from there.
Sure. So Tucker Smith, I run business development partnerships for Docstoc. I think I'm the oldest person in the company, which is not a good thing, I guess. I started my career in the content world. Actually, I was a editor of 2 sports magazines. Started my own company that went to work for eBay, which is really where I kind of cut my teeth in technology. I was there for about 5 years. Moved south for a company called Spot Runner, who, if you guys know about that story, very interesting one. Learned a lot of good things and a lot of bad things about startups. And then took a little bit of time at an agency. Now I'm here at Docstoc.
Cool. John?
I'm John Jorgensen. I'm the business development manager here. And I actually interned at Docstoc back when they were in a little shoebox office in Beverly Hills, working on a laptop, literally on my lap, I think staring at Jason about this far away. That was interesting. That was a good experience. But I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Right out of college, I worked at a web startup here in Santa Monica called People Jam, where I built an ad network. Then after that, I worked on my own for a little bit, doing small business marketing, helping small businesses get online, doing paid search campaigns. Did a little bit of consulting for Docstoc, and then Jason brought me in full-time to do business development.
I'm Jeff Conkey. I'm the advertising manager. So basically, I manage all the ads on the site, getting new partnerships, optimizing, data analysis, things like that. I worked at Google before this for 5 years in AdSense, and Jason was one of my clients, and then he snatched me up. So that's what I
And
did.
you may, some of you may actually remember, Jeff, I think it was Startups Uncensored number 12 that we did just on AdSense when you were still at Google, and then about 2 weeks later, you came to work for us.
Yeah.
So beware, if you're on the Startups Uncensored panel, we're going to invite you to come to Docstoc. And then Kaveh?
All right, my name is Kaveh Motamed. I'm the content manager at Docstoc. Just like John, I started as an intern, but before that I was working at Merrill Lynch on the investment banking side, and then I worked at a hedge fund in renewable energy. So I came from the finance and accounting side. I came on to startup world.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to ask a bunch of different questions to each of you because I think it's a varied experience. Tucker, one of the questions I've got for you is, what's the experience been like of coming in a senior role to a startup company where there's not a lot of people there? And we talked about this early on, right? Like, it's a small company. We all, need to get stuff done. What's been your experience in trying to bring, both a can-do attitude of getting stuff done, but also helping us grow from a strategic standpoint and really helping us blow out the big vision for Docstoc?
Well, it's a good question. So I coming from eBay and also Spot Runner to a large extent, with very slow-moving companies, right? So you come into Docstoc, and probably a lot of you guys with your startups, you're very fast-moving, right? You got to get your bearings, right? Because I come in, I'm used to kind of a methodical approach to product planning. You have to justify ROI, NPVs, XYZ. Docstoc is like, hey, we've got an idea, let's do it, right? And it took me 2 or 3 months to adjust, if you recall, right? And you were kind of frustrated with me, like, is this the right guy? Like, what the hell's he doing? But once I got my bearings, it actually becomes this huge luxury, right? And you guys are all on this point with your business where you can quickly iterate, right? You don't have to wait for anybody. You don't have to wait for a consumer panel. You don't have to wait for an NPV analysis. You can just get stuff up there and go, right? And that's one thing that has really been impressed about Docstoc is that it's grown from a couple people up to 30, 35 people, and it's still maintained that. And I think that's really hard for a lot of companies to do, is that they get more methodical. They start to think too much, and they're not iterating enough. And one thing that I've been trying to push on is I'm trying to figure out how to control that chaos or kind of harness that chaos in a way that moves us down a path that I think is the right place for us to go. But I don't want to lose that. It would be easy for me to come in and say, no, slow down. We got to look at it this way. We got to look at it this way before we do anything. And that would crush the spirit of the company, right? And I think maintaining that is a big part of what you need to bring to the table and what I need to help do as well.
So we've talked a lot about in this panel of the early part of our company moving at speed. What do you think are the next challenges for us that our companies here are going to face where you actually do need to slow down, be more thoughtful, be strategic? What are the challenges and opportunities that we're facing that a lot of the folks here either are facing in their business or probably will pretty soon?
I think the biggest thing is getting a sense of self, right? So when in startups, and this is the case is still at Docstoc, we breathe our own oxygen, and we really like what we build, right? And it seems to make complete sense to us. But if it doesn't make sense to others outside of the company, when you start to go out, and business development is all about taking your product out and trying to find partnerships, trying to find sales, et cetera. So you got to tell the story, right? And usually the story is interesting at the beginning, but then when you start to think about execution, it falls apart. So what happens is when you're breathing your own oxygen, you don't have a realistic sense of self, right? And I've come in and I've challenged the team a lot about what is it that we're doing, why are we doing it, and who's it for? And a lot of questions that we I think the company had ideas about, had a real sense of what it is, but it may not be reality. And what we're finding is we go out, and you talked about what are the things we were doing right, what are the things wrong. We go out and we talk to these large companies about document management, right? I mean, documents, it's really kind of a boring thing when you think about it, right? It's like kind of offline, 1970s IBM. You print out a document, you sign it, and you submit it, right? It has nothing to do with Web 2.0. But what Docstoc has done is we've harnessed all of that print material into a Web 2.0 vehicle where you can really find what you need to move forward, right? So when we go and we talk to these large companies, and we're talking to all these large companies, we're talking to Google, Yahoo, AOL, et cetera, and they all get it. They're like, yeah, I understand documents, right? But then you think to yourself, well, it's more than just a document, right? What else can that document do for me? They're starting to challenge us and say, you know what that document can do is it can give me an insight into that business. And you're like, oh, that's a really good way to think about it, right? So it kind of allows us to pivot a little bit. It's not a full pivot, but allows us to change courses. And I think that's a really important thing to be able to do is to recognize that you're probably wrong. You know, the one thing that I know about the Docstoc business model is that it's wrong, right? You have to iterate. If you look at yourself in your mirror and think that you've got a 100% bulletproof business model, it's an unrealistic sense of self. You've got to say to yourself, my business model is wrong. How do I need to fix it? How do I need to move it to the adjustments and the currents of the market?
John, you work with Tucker, and there are different kind of deals that you work on. You've now been with us full time for about a year, and you're in the second iteration. And one of the things that you did great early on is like you were just hammering out and closing deals left and right. Can you talk a little bit about being relatively early on in your career and seeing a lot of success in the web space so far? How you've been successful in closing partnerships, reaching out to other companies. What are some of the things that you've learned and that you implement on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that helps us as a company close more partnerships and that folks here can learn from you?
Sure. So first is prospecting, right? I mean, you have to know who you want to go out and work with. So you need to find the best in those fields and go after those first and fast. I don't think that if you just take a huge list of 1,000 companies and try to go after them all at once, I think you're going to fail. But at the same time, one of the big things I've learned is you have to continually keep reaching out. A lot of, as human beings, we do well with positive feedback, and we do well with rewards. And in the business development business, especially in the beginning, when you're prospecting, when you're going after huge companies, especially if you're a startup and you don't have a lot of brand name recognition, and we're a bigger startup, but we still don't have a ton of brand name recognition out there, sometimes you don't hear back. And one of the big things is you just have to keep reaching out, keep following up. One of the things I learned with Tucker, that actually Tucker taught me aside from hair tips is
nice, very nice.
Is be inquisitive, right? So I just started. I have all these great bullet points about Docstoc. I'm so excited to get out there and tell people how great we are, how great the product is, how great the opportunity is. But really, you have to realize that it's a people business, and you're talking to another person, and they have their own intentions, their own priorities. And you really have to be inquisitive, and Jason, you help me out with that too, is you have to ask them when you get someone on the phone, who are you, what are you working on, what are your priorities, what are you trying to accomplish? And then you kind of work backwards from there, right? And you figure out how what you're doing and what your opportunity is can fit them and fit that mold and fit into that slot. So that would be the number one thing is just give first and don't even expect anything back. And if you just keep giving enough, eventually it's going to come back your way.
And so talk about a little bit about, so there's this prospecting process, you reach out to people like, Forbes or Microsoft or AOL or Entrepreneur Magazine, and you break through, you get them on the phone, you're talking to their business development person, you get a warm lead, now you're on the phone and you're pitching Docstoc, you're trying to figure out something to do. What are the areas, what are the things you've learned that really help close a deal and make a deal happen? And what are the challenges that you still see that we face that probably other people are facing as well?
Sure. So, when it comes down to actually closing the deal, again, one of the big things is just persistence. I mean, you really, if you're not persistent, it's easy. It's easy for things to just fall by the wayside. And people's inboxes, I'm sure if it's anything like mine, are just, you just get bombarded with stuff.
But how persistent are you? What does that mean specifically? How many times will you email and call somebody before the deal's done, after you get in contact with them?
So just keep following up. Always look for something. There's always something that you can reach out to. There's always something you can reach out with. So if you're talking to the Wall Street Journal, send them something interesting about business. Learn who they are and learn kind of what they're interested in, and then always just find a way to reach out and say, hey, I saw this other thing. It might even be completely unrelated, to the deal, but you find a way to stay on their radar, and you just find a way to keep providing value, and you have to keep the excitement level up, right? You have to say, hey, we're moving really quick. If something's stagnant, just say, hey, these partnerships are moving fast. Show examples of already successful partnerships that you have, and say, we'd love to get you guys on board. I don't know how long we're going to be able to keep providing this kind of support and putting these types of deals together. So just kind of have that sense of urgency and keep them motivated to want to close the deal.
And one of the big challenges you're finding in the weekly basis of trying to form partnerships with that may be applicable to what other folks are facing them as well?
Sure. So people, especially if you're dealing with larger companies, they just have so many deals on their plate. So you have to find a way to stand out, and that means something different, to everybody. But really, you just have to find a way to be unique, to kind of tell people why they should focus on you. And sometimes one of the things that you have to be creative about is it's not always revenue, right? As a startup, you can't always promise all this great revenue, so you have to come up with other benefits that are going to benefit that partner, whether it's it'll help provide value to your audience, it'll help you improve in other areas. So try to find out what they're interested in other than revenue and go after those points.
Yeah, and let's just add on to that. I think it's really important as you talk to the larger companies that you have to recognize you need to connect all the dots. They're not going to do it. You're pitching them. You're trying to develop a relationship with them. You've got to, first of all, understand their business. What are their challenges? What are they trying to do? And you've got to get into solutions mode. Right? Business development is not about sales. Right? I'm not selling widgets or used cars. I'm selling a solution. Right? First of all, I need to understand that I have a solution for this company, or I shouldn't even be calling them. We're a little bit different that way. Jason just gets on the phone. He just hammers away. He tries to find some sort of an opening, right? And that works sometimes, right? But as we talk to larger companies, good. So, but as you talk to larger companies, you really need to say to yourself, what is their issue? What are they trying to do? So look at their 10Ks. Look at all their press releases. Look at their articles. What is their big thing? Not only today, but 6 months, 12 months from now, and come in with a solution, right? You got to find your internal advocate. And you got to make that person look really smart because they want to advance in that organization, right? It's very rare that you get to the CEO and he just parts the sea and everything comes together, right? You've got to find somebody, usually it's middle management, who you're going to make that person look really smart. You say, you know what, Bob, I know what's going on. I know what your issues are. I have a solution. I can help. Let me show you how I can help. And you make him present that idea, or you get him to present that idea internally, right? Then you're totally out of sales mode. You're in relationship mode. You're making this person look smart with your solution because it's like he can go and say, "Look, I got it. I got that thing. I know what we should do." So he's selling on your behalf. So you're out of that mode. You're just in relationship building mode and continue to make him look smart, and it makes things so much easier.
So Jeff, you had been at Google previously to coming into Docstoc, and when you came in, you were in a bit of a different situation than a lot of folks in that you actually had a big sandbox to play with. We were doing a couple $1 million a year in advertising revenue, and you had the ability to jump in and affect that right away. Talk about the transition from working at Google to a startup, and as folks here may be trying to recruit folks from really big companies to startup, what those early growing pains were like from you, and then the big kind of lessons for success that you took from working at Docstoc over the past year.
Sure. So I think it's a lot of what some of the other people were saying before. It's the flexibility and the speed at which we move. That was something that was really enticing to me because at Google it got kind of stale because when I started there were about 3,000 people. When I left, it was like 30,000. So as it got bigger, you had more and more people to report to. If you had any kind of innovative idea, you had to sell it to like 30 people who had no interest in what you were doing and had their own agendas. And it's really different from that here. So everybody works together really well, and everybody kind of is challenged to come up with ideas on their own, both in what they're doing and in what their other areas of the company. So, I do advertising, but I do a lot of other tests and things on the site just to kind of mix it up here and there. So I think that some of the lessons for success are kind of staying organized in an ambiguous environment like this. I got a bit of experience at Google too, but it's definitely even more so here. Like John was saying, like, your inbox is really full with a lot of things. If you don't prioritize those, then things will kind of drop by the wayside. And one thing I wanted to comment on for finding a developer, if the Docstoc guys are any indicator, you got to give them free Red Bull, and you can meet them that way. So.
And Jeff's probably one of the top AdSense experts in the entire country. Probably knows about it more at this point than literally any other folks. So if you guys are trying to figure out how to start to monetize your site with AdSense and how you build that up, I'd encourage you to go talk to Jeff, and he'd be a fantastic resource to help you out. And I mean, we've been able to very meaningfully, with you at the company, increase our yield and percent return on AdSense. What was some of the process you went through, and how did you help us make more money?
So we're in sort of a lucky spot there. We have a custom form of AdSense, which is only really reserved for the larger partners in the program. But what it did is it allowed for a lot of flexibility. Also, our content and our site is basically like the perfect design for AdSense, where we have a long tail of really varied content. It's a great fit for AdSense. It's perfect with the contextual targeting that they do and just the size of the program. So a lot of the things that I've been doing are just trying out new formats and understanding where users are and where they're going and where they're interacting, and also which are your target users. And it's actually been kind of a challenge in the last 6 months, is that we've got our subscription model and we've also got our AdSense model, and they kind of clash a lot. Because if I drive $1 in AdSense, that may take away $1 of subscription. So that's been a challenge, actually. That's been an interesting dynamic that we have at the company. But it's a lot of testing and figuring out. Like Alan was saying before, it's just, it's kind of test, and you see what drives more clicks and what people are going to do. And there are definitely a lot of different ways to approach that. So.
Cool. And so Kaveh is our content manager, and you work and manage now a team of dozens of different writers that create premium content for us for our subscription process, for our subscription product. But I think one thing that'd be interesting too is, can you tell your story of how you actually started at Docs and got hired? Because I know a lot of you here are wondering, how do I break into tech? What do I do? And honestly, what Kaveh did, the way that Kaveh kind of earned a spot at Docstoc, I think is a great lesson for a lot of us.
Okay, so before I came to Docstoc, I was working at a hedge fund in renewable energy, so I was more into finance. And in 2008, in the subprime crisis, they liquidated the fund, and then I was introduced to Jason through Rusty Canyon. And when I first started, I was an intern. It was non-paid internship for about 2 months. And I just executed. I just did whatever needed to be done. It didn't matter what it was. I didn't complain. And I knew, it was an area where I had zero knowledge in. So I would go home, use Wikipedia, just kind of learn and research other companies, and just did whatever needed to be done. So that's pretty much the key point. Just do it.
And so the really interesting Kaveh is, we were still a much smaller company even too when we hired you, but there was no position. It wasn't we had open rec and we hired you. We literally just created a position for Kaveh because he was so valuable. He had done so much to help us as a company. They were like, we have to be able to bring this guy on board. And he's an example of what a lot of folks are at Docstoc, is just great at getting stuff done. And I think you put it that way. We can just always rely on you, just like the rest of the team, to when we need to get a result, when we need to get something done, which is the lifeblood of startups, that always happens. So we're running a bit over. I want to take 1 or 2 questions for this team, and then we'll go into some announcements and we'll break. So over here, what's your name? Right, yeah, the glass.
My name's Devin.
Hey, Devin, what's your question?
So it's a BizDev question, maybe for you and for the panel as well. In the early days, you build this great new site, you put it out there, and then what? You wait. What's the single best thing you ever did to drive sort of critical mass for traffic or really get awareness out about it? Did you just get lucky, or was there something specific that you could look back at and go, that was a genius move?
So as far as getting critical mass, I mean, everyone will find their own way. One of the things that we recognized early on is that we were going to get the majority of our traffic from search engines. So the single metric for the first year was the only thing that was important to us is number of documents in the repository that we got from user-generated content, and then the traffic that drove. What I will say to your first part of your question is, what do you do when you're small and you don't have leverage in the business development process? And what you shouldn't overlook is the willingness of people to work with other people that they like. And that's a huge leverage point that a lot of us often over times overlook, which is, yeah, you may not have a lot of traffic, you may not have a lot of money in the bank, you may not have a lot of revenue, but if you're persistent to what John said, and you solve problems as to what Tucker said, and you're just someone that gets something done as to what Kaveh said, and you really reach out and you form a personal relationship, people will just work with you because they like you. And that's not a sustainable situation when you're a Fortune 500 company, but when you're starting out and you need to get that first deal because you have that chicken and egg problem, doing things like going to conferences and just going to dinner or drinks with someone from a large company like Living Social, you'd be surprised at how often then they'll say, you know what, this is a cool person, we want to help them out. Because in the internet space, they were where you were just a year or two ago, right? You're not dealing with Fortune 500s like General Electric that have no expectation of where you're at. These are folks that were fighting and scrapping just like you were a year or two ago. And so really making it about, hey, this is someone I like and believe in, you can leverage that a lot early on. Other questions? Right over here.
Really quick, before launching the site, what was your marketing focus? And how did you go about building the infrastructure of having 30 employees now before the launch? How did you guys figure out what infrastructure needs to be built in regards to different positions?
There wasn't a lot of infrastructure before. You figured out along the way, our focus was always on providing professional documents. That's now morphed into being the premier resource online for small businesses. And there was no plan for infrastructure. We just kind of figured it out as we went along. Over here, yeah.
Early on,
What's your name?
Travis.
Travis.
Hi. Early on and also now, I guess, did you guys focus more on growth and traffic or revenue? As a startup, because some startups go the model of not worrying about the money early on and just trying to get as many eyeballs, or so what did you guys focus on and how did that help you?
Sure. So I'll answer this and then we'll start to transition. But it really depends on the business that you're building. We built a business that we knew was going to require scale to get to the goals that we wanted. So because we had an all-free site to start off with, we had to be able to reach millions of people to really be able to build a business that then was going to make tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And so our goal for the first year was scale, scale, scale. And then like a lot of other internet companies do, we went to a freemium model where there's some stuff that's free and there's some stuff that's paid. That's not always the best way to go. And a lot of times, if I had to start a new internet company, I would build a product from day one. We were charging from like ZipRecruiter. And just to give Ian another plug, ZipRecruiter doesn't need 10 million people a month, 25 million people a month like we have to be successful. How many customers do you have now, Ian? You've got 1,000. And he's got a business that you now employ how many people? 4 people. And so, listen, we certainly couldn't employ 4 people with 1,000 visitors. That wouldn't even pay for any of you to walk in the door here this evening. But different businesses require different things. And one of the big mantras that we've had at Docstoc now, that we've been pushing forward for the last year is the following, which is when you're starting out and you're early on, and as you're growing your companies, one of the big challenges is not that there's not opportunity, but that there are so many different opportunities and so many different directions you can go in, and which ones do you pick? And I think if you've taken anything away from us this evening, it's that, hey, we move quickly, we try lots of things, we test things, we try to have a big vision for what we're going towards. And there are 4 factors that we look at the company when we make any product decision, when we make any development decision, and when we make any business decision. And it's the lens at which we look at every single thing in which we do. And we ask ourselves these 4 questions, and I would encourage you to really use this as your mantra. And the first question we asked, and Judy was talking about this before, is what's the potential upside of this particular effort? The second is, what's its likelihood of success? The third is, what's the effort involved? And the fourth is, how strategic is this to my business? So once again, what's the potential upside? What's its likelihood of success? What's the effort involved? And what's the strategic value? And what you want to do is, as startups, we can't work on things that if you do them, don't have a big upside. We're not going to move our businesses. You've got to do things that if they work big. Second is, we've got to manage for the likelihood of success of the effort. So the trick is to simultaneously be working on things that can make a big difference but maybe have a lower likelihood of success while we're constantly knocking out those things that make the 5, 10, 15% difference. And that's the challenge, right? How do we do the things that we know are going to work and make a little bit of difference while we work on the big things that we don't know if it'll work? And then you need to temper that all by the fact of saying, what's the effort involved here? How much time is it going to take? How much money is it going to take? Because we can work on big things that we're not sure of the likelihood of success, but if there's a lot of effort involved, that's where the risk really comes into play. And then you look at all of it at the end and say, how strategic is this? If we actually accomplish this effort, how meaningful will it be for our business a year, 2 years, 3 years out? And part of our big challenge has been building the discipline to make every single decision we make in the company around that framework. And the more discipline we've got about it, and the more we've held to that, the more successful we've been at utilizing the resources we have to get a lot more done than everybody else around us. And so one of the things I can say is, to the extent that you use that framework, you'll all be successful. And if I can just take a moment, and I said this to the team, and we're wrapping up now in just a bit, but every Friday we get together as a team. We talk about our successes and what happened that week, and just do a quick check-in, and then hang out together for a little while in a non-work atmosphere. And I was telling a story about 2 weeks ago of how when I was 22 years old, I remember, I swear to goodness, I was like watching Ally McBeal. I was like, oh, this is so cool. There's this company of all these young people, and there's this unisex bathroom, and like they all hang out together and have these wacky adventures. And I remember very explicitly thinking to myself, that is something I would love to be able to create one day. And I didn't know how. I mean, I was 22. I was just out of college. It just seemed like a pipe dream. And I remember after we all had this one really hard week working together and hanging out, it just struck me. It's like, this is what we've now created at Docstoc, minus the unisex bathroom, which I would personally be a little freaked out about. And I can honestly say that one of the biggest joys in my life is getting to come into work every day with this group of men and women that work their asses off, that are really the best at what they do, that are all just really good people. And I wish all of you really the same opportunity and excitement to work with a group of people that are as amazing. And I couldn't be more proud and thankful of everybody at Docstoc. And if we were able to impart anything upon you tonight that helps you out as you start and grow your companies, it just means a lot to me that we're able to do it together as a team. So thank you all for coming out, but more importantly, thank you all for everyone at Docstoc for tonight and everything that you do. We can get the music turned back up. Alea, where are you at? Alea's got the tickets. You can come find her if you tweet it out and you want to know if you won the Israel ticket. Everyone, thank you for coming out to Startups Uncensored 21. We look forward to seeing you for Startup Uncensored number 22.